I sit alone in my apartment staring at the Forbes notification on my phone. My tech startup just hit a $90 million valuation, yet the silence from my family feels deafening. 3 hours earlier, they had chosen my cousin's gender reveal party over my company's IPO announcement. My father's text arrives, family dinner at 6 p.m., important discussion. I grip a leather portfolio containing acquisition offers and investment proposals. Tonight, I'm bringing something that will change everything. The question isn't whether they'll finally respect me, it's whether I'll give them the chance. Growing up as the middle child in the Patterson family meant living in perpetual shadows. My father, Frank, owned 3 successful auto dealerships across our mid-sized Michigan town, employing over 200 people and earning respect as a pillar of the business community. My older brother, Marcus, followed the expected path, becoming a cardiovascular surgeon at Detroit Medical Center, while my younger sister, Jessica, established herself as a prominent criminal defense attorney with her own practice downtown. Then there was me, Taylor, the family anomaly, who preferred keyboards to carburetors and algorithms to athletics. During my childhood, family conversations revolved around Marcus's football achievements or Jessica's debate team victories. I'd sit quietly at the dinner table sketching software interfaces in notebook margins while they discussed real accomplishments. When I won the state computer programming competition at 16, my father's response was lukewarm congratulations, followed immediately by excitement about Marcus's college football scholarship offer that arrived the same day. My parents attended every one of Marcus's games, driving 3 hours to watch him play. They never missed Jessica's mock trial competitions, cheering from the gallery as she demolished opposing arguments. But when I graduated summa cum laude from Michigan State with a computer science degree, they were notably absent. Frank claimed a dealership emergency, though I later discovered he'd spent the afternoon playing golf with his business partners. Computer science isn't a real career, Frank would tell his friends. Taylor's just playing with expensive toys. He needs to learn practical skills that build something tangible. After graduation, I worked for 3 years as a software engineer at a mid-level tech company in Grand Rapids, earning a steady salary, but feeling unfulfilled. My evenings were spent developing mobile applications in my cramped studio apartment, dreaming of creating something meaningful. The idea for MindBridge Technologies emerged during those late nights, born from memories of my own teenage struggles with depression after my mother Linda's death from cancer when I was 14. 2 years ago, I made the decision that would define my life. I quit my stable job and invested every dollar of my $20,000 savings into building an AI-powered mental health support platform specifically designed for teenagers. The app connected struggling adolescents with peer support groups, professional counselors, and crisis intervention resources through sophisticated matching algorithms I developed myself. My family's reaction was predictably dismissive. Frank called it another computer fantasy and suggested I return to real work before I embarrassed myself further. Marcus worried I was having a midlife crisis at 28 years old. Jessica questioned my business acumen, wondering how I planned to compete against established healthcare companies. Their skepticism only intensified when I moved into an even smaller apartment to reduce expenses and started eating ramen noodles for every meal. Frank would lecture me during family gatherings about financial responsibility and practical decision-making, using my situation as a cautionary tale for my teenage cousins. 6 months ago, everything began changing. MindBridge landed its first major contract with Beaumont Health, providing mental health support for teenage patients across their hospital network. The platform's success rate in connecting at-risk adolescents with appropriate resources exceeded all clinical trial expectations, catching attention from other healthcare systems throughout the Midwest. 3 months ago, I secured Series A funding of $12 million from a venture capital firm in Chicago, allowing me to hire a development team and expand our service offerings. The funding announcement appeared in several business publications, though my family never mentioned reading about it. Last month brought the partnership that would change everything: 3 major university systems in Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois committed to implementing MindBridge across their campus mental health services, creating a potential user base of over 100,000 college students. This week, Forbes featured my story in their 30 Under 30 technology section, highlighting how MindBridge had already helped over 5,000 teenagers navigate mental health crises and connect with appropriate support resources. The article described my journey from small-town dreamer to tech entrepreneur and announced the company's upcoming initial public offering. I specifically invited my family to the IPO announcement celebration, planning it for Thursday evening at the downtown convention center. The event would include presentations from our hospital, partners' testimonials from families whose children we'd helped, and recognition from state mental health advocacy organizations. On Tuesday, my cousin Sarah announced her gender reveal party for the same Thursday evening. Within minutes, the family group chat exploded with enthusiasm. Everyone immediately committed to attending Sarah's celebration, with Jessica writing, "Your computer thing can wait. Family comes first." Marcus added, "Maybe next time plan something more important than a business meeting." The betrayal cut deeper when I learned through my aunt's friend that my family had actively debated whether my little business venture warranted missing Sarah's party. Frank had apparently told the entire extended family, "Taylor needs to learn that real achievements matter more than his gaming hobby. Sarah's creating new life while he's playing with imaginary software." Thursday evening arrived, and I sat in the convention center surrounded by empty chairs where my family should have been. My business partner Ryan, our 12-person development team, and several hundred healthcare professionals filled the rest of the venue. Local news crews interviewed me about becoming the youngest tech entrepreneur to receive state recognition for innovation in mental health services. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from industry leaders, hospital administrators, and venture capital firms, but remained silent from anyone sharing my last name. The irony wasn't lost on me that strangers celebrated my achievements, while my own family considered them unworthy of their attention. Meanwhile, social media filled with photos from Sarah's party showing my entire extended family laughing together, enjoying elaborate decorations and catered dinner. Frank posted a picture of himself surrounded by grandchildren with the caption, "Nothing beats family time with people who matter." Jessica tagged everyone except me in a group photo captioned, "Best family ever." That evening, as I returned to my apartment holding a Crystal Award for Outstanding Innovation in Youth Mental Health Services, I realized this pattern had defined my entire relationship with my family. They attended Marcus's medical school graduation, but missed my college honors ceremony because it conflicted with Jessica's law school orientation. They threw Jessica a celebration party when she passed the bar exam, but never acknowledged my software engineering certifications or professional achievements. My phone rang as I placed the award on my kitchen counter. A headhunter from San Francisco explained that a major Silicon Valley technology firm wanted to offer me a position as Chief Technology Officer, developing mental health platforms for their global user base of over 50 million people. The compensation package totaled $12 million over 4 years, with stock options potentially worth millions more. "We've been watching your career for months," the recruiter explained. "Your independence and innovative vision exactly match what we need. Most entrepreneurs your age rely heavily on family support, but you've built something remarkable entirely on your own merit." As I hung up the phone, I realized that successful people outside my family had been recognizing and valuing my work for months. The problem wasn't my achievements or their significance. The problem was my family's inability to see beyond their narrow definition of success. Friday morning brought an avalanche of consequences from the Forbes article that would shatter my family's comfortable misconceptions about my computer hobby. The Forbes piece went live at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, featuring a full-page photograph of me in my office, surrounded by monitors displaying MindBridge's user interface. The headline read, "Small-Town Visionary Builds $90 Million Mental Health Empire." The article detailed how my platform had prevented over 200 teenage suicide attempts in the past year, alone earning recognition from the American Psychological Association and the National Institute of Mental Health. By 8 a.m., Frank's phone started ringing. His golf buddies called to congratulate him on his successful son. Business associates who'd previously dismissed my career choices now wanted introductions to discuss technology partnerships. The mayor's office contacted Frank's dealership, hoping to arrange a meeting with me about expanding mental health resources in our community. Frank's confusion was evident when his longtime friend Bill Thompson called specifically to praise my work. "Your boy Taylor's making national news," Bill said. "My daughter's a psychologist in Chicago, and she says his platform is revolutionary. She's trying to get their hospital system to sign up for his services." Frank had no idea what to say. For 2 years, he'd dismissed my work as meaningless computer entertainment. Now he was fielding calls from respected community members who understood my company's value better than he did. Jessica experienced similar embarrassment at her law firm. During their Friday morning partners meeting, senior attorney David Walsh mentioned reading about a local entrepreneur who'd built a successful technology company addressing mental health issues. His platform uses artificial intelligence to connect teenagers with appropriate resources, David explained. "It's exactly the kind of innovation our healthcare clients need." When David pulled up the Forbes article and Jessica saw my photograph, her face flushed with recognition. She'd spent months telling colleagues that her brother was struggling with an unrealistic business idea, never bothering to learn what that business actually accomplished. Marcus faced his own humiliation at Detroit Medical Center. During rounds, the psychiatry department chief mentioned an innovative mental health platform that was changing adolescent care across the Midwest. "The developer is some young genius from Michigan," Dr. Stevens explained. "His technology is more effective at crisis intervention than traditional methods we've used for decades." When Marcus later Googled my name and discovered the scope of my achievements, he felt sick with embarrassment. He'd been telling colleagues that his younger brother was going through a phase and needed to find real employment in healthcare or technology. The most crushing revelation came when Frank decided to thoroughly research my company for the first time. He discovered that MindBridge Technologies employed 37 full-time workers, had contracts with 15 hospital systems across 5 states, and generated more monthly revenue than his best-performing dealership's annual profits. My platform's impact statistics were staggering. Over 5,000 teenagers, helped 200 suicide attempts, prevented partnerships with 12 major universities, and recognition from 6 national mental health organizations. The technology I developed had been featured in 3 peer-reviewed medical journals and presented at 4 major healthcare conferences. Frank found testimonials from parents whose children's lives had been saved by MindBridge's crisis intervention features. He read letters from therapists praising the platform's ability to connect at-risk adolescents with appropriate resources. He discovered that major healthcare systems were actively recruiting me to expand their mental health services. Most importantly, Frank realized that my imaginary computer business was actually valued at $90 million by Forbes and potential acquirers, making it worth more than all 3 of his dealerships combined. The family's private group chat suddenly became active Friday afternoon, with everyone expressing concern about reaching out to Taylor and showing more interest in his projects. Jessica suggested they include him more in family activities, while Marcus proposed they learn about his technology innovations. Sarah felt particularly guilty about the timing of her party announcement. She'd unknowingly scheduled her gender reveal on the same evening as my most significant professional milestone, and the family's enthusiastic abandonment of my celebration for hers now seemed thoughtlessly cruel. By Friday evening, Frank had crafted what he believed was a diplomatic text message. "Family dinner at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Important discussion." The message contained no apology for missing my IPO celebration, no acknowledgement of my achievements, and no recognition of their years of dismissive treatment. It simply assumed I would drop everything to accommodate their schedule, just as I'd always done before. I stared at Frank's text for several minutes, recognizing the familiar power dynamic. Even now, with undeniable proof of my success splashed across national media, he still expected me to respond to his summons without question or explanation. But something fundamental had shifted inside me during those lonely hours at my IPO celebration. Watching my business partner Ryan give a speech about our platform's impact, while my family posted party photos on social media, had crystallized a painful truth. I'd spent 28 years seeking approval from people who would never value what I actually accomplished. I spent Friday evening preparing for Saturday's dinner with the methodical precision I used for software development. I reviewed all 3 acquisition offers in detail with my attorney printed copies of the Forbes article, along with every major media piece about my company from the past year, and compiled documentation of awards and recognition from healthcare organizations. I also prepared a detailed presentation about MindBridge's social impact, including testimonials from teenagers whose lives had been saved by our crisis intervention features and letters from parents expressing gratitude for the support their children had received through our platform. Ryan called Friday night to check on my emotional state after the family drama. "You know you don't owe them anything at this point," he said. "Your success speaks for itself. Maybe it's time to show them exactly who you've become." I agreed, but with an important distinction. I wasn't attending tomorrow's dinner to seek their approval or acceptance. I was going to establish boundaries and demonstrate that their opinion of my choices no longer carried the weight it once had. As I packed the leather portfolio with acquisition offers, media coverage, and impact documentation, I felt a calm determination I'd never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I was entering a family gathering, not as the dismissed dreamer seeking validation, but as a successful entrepreneur who'd proven his worth to the people who actually mattered. The question wasn't whether my family would finally respect me. The question was whether I would give them the opportunity to earn back the respect they'd forfeited through years of dismissive behavior. Saturday arrived, and I prepared for the most important family dinner of my life, knowing that regardless of their reaction, I would leave that house as someone who finally understood his own value. During my preparation, an unexpected call came from the mayor's office. Our city wanted to honor me with the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award at next month's Chamber of Commerce Gala, recognizing both my business success and my platform's positive impact on local teenagers. The mayor's assistant mentioned that over 2,000 adolescents in our county had already accessed mental health resources through MindBridge, and preliminary data suggested our intervention features had prevented at least 15 local suicide attempts in the past 6 months. As I hung up the phone, I realized that while my family had been dismissing my work as a computer hobby, I'd been quietly saving lives in our own community. The irony was profound. I'd achieved recognition from city leadership and state mental health organizations, while my own father couldn't be bothered to learn what my company actually did. Saturday afternoon brought an air of uncomfortable anticipation to the Patterson household as my family prepared for the dinner that would forever alter our relationships. Frank paced through his study, surrounded by printed articles about my company that he'd never bothered to read before. The Forbes piece lay open on his mahogany desk, beside financial reports detailing MindBridge's revenue streams and growth projections. For the first time in 2 years, he was attempting to understand the business he'd consistently dismissed as computer gaming. The numbers were undeniable. My platform generated more monthly recurring revenue than his highest-performing dealership earned in an entire quarter. The technology I developed had attracted investment from firms that typically focused on companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Healthcare systems across 5 states were expanding their contracts with MindBridge, recognizing the platform's unprecedented effectiveness in adolescent mental health intervention. Frank's phone continued ringing throughout Saturday with congratulatory calls from friends and business associates. Each conversation forced him to confront his ignorance about my achievements and admit he didn't understand the scope or significance of my work. "Your son's a genius," his longtime friend Robert Martinez said during a Saturday morning call. "My wife's a social worker, and she says his platform is changing how we help troubled teenagers. The hospitals in Detroit are trying to get contracts with his company." Frank mumbled vague responses, embarrassed to admit he'd never asked me detailed questions about my business model or social impact. He'd assumed my work was insignificant because he didn't understand technology, not because it lacked value or importance. Jessica spent Saturday morning at her law office, ostensibly preparing for Monday's cases, but actually researching my company's legal structure and intellectual property portfolio. She discovered that I'd filed 14 patents for mental health technology innovations licensed software to 3 major healthcare companies and established partnerships with universities she'd only dreamed of working with during law school. Her legal training allowed her to appreciate the sophisticated business structure I'd created. MindBridge wasn't a simple app or website. It was a comprehensive technology platform with multiple revenue streams, regulatory compliance across healthcare privacy laws, and contractual relationships with some of the most prestigious medical institutions in the Midwest. Jessica realized she'd been condescending towards someone who'd built a more complex and valuable business than any client she'd represented. Her expertise in corporate law made her achievements seem modest compared to the innovative technology company I'd created entirely on my own. Marcus spent Saturday afternoon reviewing medical literature about adolescent mental health interventions, trying to understand how my platform integrated with clinical treatment protocols. What he discovered shocked him. MindBridge had been featured in several peer-reviewed psychiatry journals as a breakthrough innovation in crisis prevention and peer support facilitation. The clinical data was remarkable. Teenagers using my platform showed significantly better treatment compliance, faster recovery times, and dramatically lower rates of self-harm compared to those receiving traditional therapy alone. Major medical schools were incorporating MindBridge case studies into their psychiatry curricula. Marcus felt embarrassed that his colleagues in the medical field understood and respected my work more than he did. He'd dismissed my company as playing with computers, while other doctors were recognizing it as a legitimate advancement in healthcare technology. Meanwhile, I spent Saturday afternoon in my apartment methodically preparing for the evening's confrontation. I organized acquisition offers from 3 separate companies, including one from a Silicon Valley firm valued at over $2 billion and another from a healthcare technology giant based in Boston. The offers weren't just about money. Each company wanted to integrate my mental health platform into their existing services, potentially reaching millions of additional users worldwide. The acquiring firms had conducted extensive due diligence on MindBridge's technology user outcomes and growth potential before making offers that valued my work at $90 million. I reviewed testimonials from teenagers whose lives had been changed by our platform. Maria, a 17-year-old from Detroit, credited MindBridge's crisis intervention feature with connecting her to help during a suicide attempt. James, a 16-year-old from Grand Rapids, said our peer support groups gave him hope during his parents' difficult divorce. These stories reminded me why I'd started the company, to provide support for struggling adolescents that I'd wished existed during my own difficult teenage years after my mother's death. My family had never asked about these human impact stories, focusing only on whether my work generated profits or prestige. I packed my leather portfolio with documentation they'd never seen: awards from mental health advocacy organizations, letters from hospital administrators praising our platform's effectiveness, and recognition from state education officials for reducing student mental health crises. The portfolio also contained something my family didn't know existed: legal documents for a foundation I'd been establishing to honor my mother's memory. The Linda Patterson Foundation would provide free mental health resources to low-income families funded by $30 million from my company's eventual sale. As 6 p.m. approached, I drove to my childhood home with a sense of calm determination I'd never experienced before. This dinner wouldn't be about seeking their approval or acceptance. It would be about establishing boundaries and demonstrating that their opinion no longer controlled my self-worth. I parked in the circular driveway beside Marcus's BMW and Jessica's Mercedes, noting how my modest Honda Civic looked out of place among their luxury vehicles. But I'd chosen to maintain my simple lifestyle during the company's growth phase, reinvesting profits into platform development and employee benefits rather than personal luxuries. Walking toward the front door, I reflected on how many times I'd entered this house hoping for validation that never came. Tonight felt different. I carried documentation of achievements that spoke for themselves regardless of my family's capacity to understand or appreciate them. Frank opened the door wearing his most serious business expression, the same look he used for important dealership negotiations. "Taylor, glad you could make it," he said, as if attending was a favor rather than a response to his summons. The formal dining room had been set for 5 people, with my usual seat at the far end of the table, away from Frank's position at the head. But everything else about the evening felt different from past family gatherings. My siblings sat quietly, avoiding eye contact, while Frank wore the uncomfortable expression of someone preparing to discuss topics he didn't fully understand. I placed my leather portfolio on the table and settled into my chair, ready for a conversation that would finally establish who I'd become and what I'd accomplished, regardless of whether they were prepared to acknowledge it. For the first time in my life, I was entering a family discussion not as the dismissed dreamer seeking recognition, but as a successful entrepreneur who'd proven his worth through measurable achievements and genuine social impact. The dinner that would reshape our family dynamics was about to begin, and I was ready to show them exactly what they'd missed while dismissing my computer hobby as insignificant entertainment. The formal dining room felt heavier than usual as my family settled into their chairs, each person carrying the weight of their recent discoveries about my success. Frank cleared his throat with the authoritative tone he typically reserved for dealership meetings. "Taylor, we wanted to talk with you about your recent business developments." He began, his voice carrying forced enthusiasm. "We've been hearing quite a bit about your technology company from friends and colleagues around town." I remained silent, watching as my family attempted to navigate a conversation about achievements they'd previously dismissed. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her chair, while Marcus studied his hands with unusual interest. The Forbes article was quite impressive. Frank continued, clearly rehearsing words he'd practiced. "We always knew you were talented with computers, and it's gratifying to see your skills being recognized nationally." Jessica nodded eagerly. "I've always told people you were smart with technology. Some of my legal colleagues were asking about your platform after reading about it in business journals." Marcus joined the performance with equal awkwardness. "I mentioned to several doctors at the hospital that my brother was developing innovative healthcare technology. They were very interested in learning more about your mental health applications. I listened to their carefully constructed narrative, noting how they were retroactively claiming support they'd never provided. Not one of them had read about my company before this week, yet they spoke as if they'd been following my progress with interest." "We've been thinking," Frank said, transitioning to the conversation's real purpose, "that maybe there are opportunities for the family to become more involved in your business operations. I could offer management consulting based on my years of experience running successful enterprises." The suggestion revealed their true motivation. They weren't interested in my achievements or their social impact. They wanted to associate themselves with my financial success and potentially benefit from the opportunities it created. Jessica leaned forward with practiced legal precision. "I could provide corporate legal services as your company expands. Having family involved in your business operations would ensure you receive trustworthy guidance during growth phases." Marcus added his own proposal with medical authority. "My healthcare background could be valuable for developing partnerships with hospital systems. I understand the clinical side of mental health services in ways that could benefit your platform development." I reached into my leather portfolio and placed the Forbes article on the table between us. The headline clearly visible: "Small-town visionary builds $90 million mental health empire." their eyes focused on the photograph of me, surrounded by monitors displaying MindBridge's user interface. This article mentions that my platform has helped over 5,000 teenagers navigate mental health crises, I said calmly. It describes partnerships with 15 hospital systems and recognition from 6 national mental health organizations. How much of this information were you aware of before this week? The question hung in the air as my family exchanged uncomfortable glances. Frank's confident demeanor faltered slightly. I continued pulling documents from my portfolio acquisition offers, partnership agreements, award certificates, and impact reports. These are offers from 3 companies wanting to acquire MindBridge for valuations ranging from $75 to $90 million. The acquiring firms have spent months conducting due diligence on our technology user outcomes and growth potential. Frank's eyes widened as he scanned the acquisition documents. The numbers were larger than anything he'd encountered in his dealership business, representing the kind of wealth and prestige he'd always pursued. Here are letters from hospital administrators explaining how our platform has reduced adolescent suicide attempts in their systems, I said, placing testimonials across the table. This recognition comes from the American Psychological Association for our innovation in crisis intervention technology. Jessica examined the APA certificate with growing amazement. Her legal training helped her appreciate the significance of recognition from such prestigious organizations. I pulled out media coverage from the past year features in Healthcare Technology News Mentions in Medical Innovation Quarterly and profiles in Business Development Weekly. This documentation represents 2 years of coverage my work has received in industry publications. How many of these articles did any of you read or mention to me? The silence stretched uncomfortably as they realized their complete ignorance about achievements that had been publicly recognized for months. Thursday evening, while you were celebrating Sarah's gender reveal party, I was receiving the Young Entrepreneur Award from the Michigan Healthcare Innovation Council, I said, placing the crystal trophy on the table. Local news crews interviewed me about becoming the youngest person to receive state recognition for mental health technology development. Frank stared at the award with growing discomfort, understanding for the first time what they'd chosen to miss. I specifically invited everyone to my IPO celebration because I wanted to share this milestone with my family. I continued, my voice remaining steady. Instead, you collectively decided that Sarah's party was more important than 2 years of work that has literally saved lives. Marcus attempted to interrupt. We didn't understand the significance of your business meeting. If we'd known it was such an important event. You didn't know because you never asked, I replied. For 2 years, every family gathering included comments about my computer hobby and suggestions that I find real work. None of you ever inquired about what my platform actually accomplished or who it helped. I reached into the portfolio for the recording device I'd brought specifically for this conversation. I need to play something for you that might provide clarity about your actual feelings regarding my career choices. Frank's expression shifted to suspicion as I activated the device, playing back a conversation my aunt had recorded at Sarah's party planning meeting. His voice came through clearly. Taylor needs to learn that real achievements matter more than his gaming hobby. Sarah's creating new life while he's playing with imaginary software. The recording continued with Jessica's voice. Maybe missing his business meeting will teach him to plan more important events that people actually want to attend. Marcus could be heard agreeing, he's been obsessed with those computer programs for years. It's time he focused on something meaningful that contributes to society. As their own words filled the dining room, my family's faces flushed with embarrassment and shame. They'd been caught expressing their genuine feelings about my work, revealing that their current enthusiasm was entirely motivated by financial opportunity rather than authentic pride or support. This recording was made last week while I was finalizing contracts with 3 major hospital systems and preparing for Forbes interviews, I said. While you were discussing how meaningless my work was, I was preventing suicide attempts and connecting struggling teenagers with resources that have saved their lives. Frank's anger flashed as he realized the implications of being recorded. Taylor, this is inappropriate. You can't secretly record family conversations and use them against us. I didn't make this recording, I replied calmly. It was shared with me by someone who felt I should understand what my family really thought about my achievements. The fact that you're angry about being caught expressing these opinions rather than embarrassed about having them reveals a lot about your priorities. Jessica attempted damage control with her legal training. We may have expressed frustration inappropriately, but that doesn't mean we don't support your success. Families sometimes say things they don't mean during private conversations. This wasn't a moment of frustration, I said. This was a deliberate conversation about whether my professional achievements warranted your attendance. You concluded they didn't based on your assessment that my work was meaningless entertainment rather than legitimate business innovation. I pulled the final documents from my portfolio legal papers for the Linda Patterson Foundation, named in memory of our mother, who had died from cancer when I was 14 years old. The Foundation's mission statement described providing free mental health resources to low-income families who couldn't afford traditional therapy or counseling services. I've been working with attorneys to establish a foundation in Mom's memory. I said, watching their expressions change as they processed this information. $30 million from my company's sale will fund comprehensive mental health services for families who can't afford help for their struggling children. The room fell completely silent as the scope of what I'd accomplished became clear. This wasn't just about business success or financial achievement. I'd created something meaningful that honored our mother's legacy, while addressing the kind of struggles I'd experienced as a teenager after losing her. Frank stared at the foundation documents with growing comprehension. You're donating $30 million to charity. I'm funding sustainable mental health resources for families who face the same challenges I experienced after Mom died, I replied. The foundation will operate the kind of comprehensive support system I wished existed when I was struggling with depression and grief as a teenager. Jessica examined the legal paperwork with professional interest, recognizing the sophisticated structure I'd created for long-term charitable impact. This is incredibly generous, Taylor. The foundation could help thousands of families over the coming years. It's already helping them, I said. MindBridge's crisis intervention features have prevented over 200 suicide attempts in the past year. The platform connects struggling teenagers with peer support, professional counseling, and emergency resources when they need help most. Marcus looked up from reading testimonial letters with newfound respect. These impact stories are remarkable. You've built something that genuinely saves lives and prevents tragedies for families throughout our region. As my family absorbed the reality of what I'd accomplished while they dismissed my work as insignificant, I felt a profound shift in the room's dynamics. For the first time in my adult life, I was sitting at this table not as the overlooked son seeking approval, but as someone who'd proven his worth through measurable achievement and genuine social contribution. The question was no longer whether they would finally respect my choices. The question was whether I would allow them the opportunity to rebuild relationships they damaged through years of dismissive treatment and conditional support. Frank's face shifted through several emotions as he processed the foundation documents and their implications. His initial embarrassment gave way to something approaching panic as he realized the magnitude of what they'd missed and dismissed. Taylor, this is incredible work, he said, his voice carrying a desperation I'd never heard before. We clearly misunderstood the scope and importance of your business. Maybe we can find ways to support the foundation and help with your future projects. Jessica nodded enthusiastically, her legal mind calculating opportunities for involvement. I could provide pro bono legal services for the foundation's operations. Having family support for your charitable work would demonstrate our commitment to your vision. Marcus leaned forward with medical authority. My connections in healthcare could be valuable for expanding the foundation's clinical partnerships. I understand hospital systems in ways that might benefit your mental health initiatives. I watched their sudden enthusiasm with detached interest, noting how quickly they'd shifted from dismissive skepticism to eager participation. Their motivation was transparently self-serving. They wanted association with my success, now that it carried prestige and recognition. Where was this enthusiasm 2 years ago when I quit my stable job to start the company? I asked. Or 18 months ago when I was eating ramen noodles every night to save money for platform development? Or 6 months ago when I secured my first major hospital contracts? Frank attempted to rationalize their previous behavior. We were concerned about your financial security and didn't want to see you struggle with an uncertain venture. Our skepticism came from wanting to protect you from potential failure. Your skepticism came from not understanding technology and assuming that anything you couldn't comprehend must be worthless, I replied. You never asked about my business model, target market, or social impact. You dismissed my work based entirely on ignorance. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Silicon Valley job offer I'd received. This is a position as Chief Technology Officer for a company with 50 million users worldwide. The compensation package totals $12 million over 4 years, with stock options potentially worth millions more. Their eyes widened as they read the offer details. The numbers represented wealth beyond anything they'd achieved in their respective careers. The recruiting firm has been tracking my career for months, I continued. They're impressed by what they call my independence and innovative vision. Most entrepreneurs my age rely heavily on family support, but I built something remarkable entirely through my own efforts. Jessica's legal training helped her appreciate the offer's significance. This is an extraordinary opportunity, Taylor. The compensation and responsibility level indicate how highly regarded your expertise has become in the technology industry. It's also 3,000 miles away from a family that has consistently demonstrated they don't value what I accomplish, I said. The position would allow me to develop mental health platforms for global audiences while working with some of the most brilliant innovators in Silicon Valley. Marcus looked alarmed at the prospect of my relocation. You're considering moving to California? What about the foundation and your local connections here in Michigan? The foundation will operate with or without my daily involvement, I replied. I've established a board of directors that includes mental health professionals, business leaders, and community advocates who understand the mission. Unlike my family, they've supported the project from its earliest stages. Frank's desperation became more evident as he realized they were losing me both professionally and personally. Taylor, surely, we can work through our past misunderstandings. Family relationships are more important than business disagreements or communication problems. This wasn't a communication problem, I said firmly. This was a systematic pattern of dismissing my achievements and devaluing my contributions. You attend every one of Marcus's medical conferences and celebrate Jessica's legal victories, but you couldn't spare one evening for my most significant professional milestone. I stood up from the table and gathered the documents back into my portfolio. I received a text this afternoon from Forbes. A Hollywood producer read my feature story and wants to option my life story for a biographical film about young entrepreneurs overcoming family doubt. The revelation stunned them into silence. Even in their wildest imagination, they couldn't have predicted that my computer hobby would attract Hollywood attention. The producer is particularly interested in the foundation angle, I continued. The story of someone honoring their deceased mother's memory by helping struggling teenagers resonates with audiences who understand the importance of meaningful work. Jessica attempted one final appeal to family loyalty. Please don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. We're willing to learn about your work and support your future endeavors. Families make mistakes, but that doesn't mean relationships can't be repaired. You're not offering to support my future endeavors, I replied. You're offering to associate yourselves with my existing success now that it's profitable and prestigious. If MindBridge had failed, you'd still be suggesting I find real work in a more traditional field. Frank made one last desperate attempt to maintain control. You can't just abandon your family because we didn't initially understand your business venture. We've always loved you even when we disagreed with your career choices. Love without respect isn't enough, I said, walking toward the dining room exit. You've demonstrated for years that you don't value my judgment, my work, or my contributions. Now you want involvement in my success without acknowledging the damage caused by your dismissive treatment. Marcus called after me as I reached the doorway. What do you want from us, Taylor? How can we prove that we're genuinely proud of what you've accomplished? I turned back to face them one final time. The time for proving your support was 2 years ago when I needed encouragement to pursue an uncertain dream, or 18 months ago when I needed emotional support during the company's difficult early phases, or 6 months ago when I achieved my first major successes. You want to prove your pride now because my achievements are visible to your friends and colleagues? I continued. Real family support happens during struggles, not after victories. You missed every opportunity to demonstrate genuine belief in my potential. I walked out of my childhood home carrying the leather portfolio that documented everything they'd failed to recognize or appreciate. Behind me, I could hear urgent whispered conversations as they grappled with the reality that their dismissive behavior had cost them a relationship with someone who'd achieved more than they'd imagined possible. For the first time in my adult life, I was leaving a family gathering, not with hurt feelings or frustrated disappointment, but with complete clarity about my own worth and their inability to recognize it. The drive back to my apartment felt liberating rather than lonely. I'd finally established boundaries with people who'd conditioned their approval on my conforming to their limited understanding of success. Their belated recognition meant nothing compared to the self-respect I'd gained by refusing to accept dismissive treatment any longer. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. How did dinner go? I replied, exactly as expected. Time to start planning for California. 3 weeks later, I would be relocating to Silicon Valley to begin the next chapter of my career, surrounded by people who valued innovation and independence, rather than traditional conformity. The foundation would continue operating in Michigan, helping struggling teenagers while honoring my mother's memory in ways my family had never thought to appreciate. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give people who don't value you is the opportunity to realize what they've lost through their own short-sighted behavior. 3 weeks passed quickly as I prepared for my relocation to Silicon Valley, each day bringing new reminders of how dramatically my life was changing, while my family struggled to process their miscalculations. Frank's dealership became an uncomfortable place for him as business associates continued congratulating him on my success. His longtime mechanic, who'd known me since childhood, mentioned reading about my platform in his daughter's college newspaper. Your boy's helping kids at universities nationwide, he said proudly. My daughter says his app connected her roommate with counseling when she was having trouble freshman year. Frank nodded awkwardly, realizing that strangers understood my work's impact better than he did. Each conversation forced him to confront his ignorance about achievements that had been developing right under his nose for 2 years. Jessica experienced similar discomfort at her law firm when clients began asking whether she could facilitate introductions to me for their healthcare technology needs. I'd like to explore partnerships between my medical practice and your brother's mental health platform, Dr. Richardson told her during a consultation. His innovation could benefit my adolescent patients significantly. Jessica had to admit she didn't understand my business well enough to arrange such discussions, revealing her disconnect from my professional accomplishments to clients who expected family members to support each other's careers. Marcus faced the most direct professional embarrassment when Detroit Medical Center's psychiatry department announced they were implementing MindBridge's platform across their adolescent mental health services. Dr. Stevens, the department chief, approached Marcus specifically because of our family connection. Your brother has developed something remarkable, Dr. Stevens explained. Our preliminary data shows his platform reduces teenage suicide attempts by 40% compared to traditional intervention methods. We're hoping to expand our contract and possibly involve him in training our clinical staff. Marcus realized that my computer hobby was being integrated into the very hospital where he worked with colleagues, viewing me as an expert in adolescent mental health innovation, while he dismissed my work as meaningless entertainment. The foundation groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for my final week in Michigan, providing an opportunity for the community to recognize both my business achievements and charitable contributions. The mayor's office coordinated the event with mental health advocacy organizations, local schools, and healthcare systems that partnered with MindBridge. My family received invitations to the ceremony, but our relationships had deteriorated beyond repair during the weeks following our disastrous dinner conversation. Frank had attempted several phone calls, but I didn't return them. Jessica sent multiple texts trying to arrange coffee meetings that I politely declined. Marcus stopped by my apartment twice, finding me unavailable for the reconciliation conversations they desperately wanted. They weren't interested in genuine accountability for their years of dismissive treatment. They wanted quick forgiveness that would allow them to associate with my success without acknowledging the damage their behavior had caused. The groundbreaking ceremony took place on a sunny Thursday morning at the site where the Linda Patterson Teen Mental Health Center would be constructed. Over 300 community members attended, including hospital administrators, school counselors, mental health advocates, and families whose children had been helped by MindBridge's platform. I spoke about my mother's memory and the teenage struggles that had inspired my work, describing how the foundation would provide comprehensive mental health resources for families who couldn't afford traditional therapy or counseling services. The center would offer crisis intervention peer support groups, family counseling, and educational programs designed specifically for adolescent mental health challenges. This foundation honors my mother's belief that every child deserves support during difficult times, I said to the assembled crowd. The resources we're creating will ensure that no teenager faces mental health struggles alone, regardless of their family's financial situation. Local news crews covered the ceremony extensively, interviewing families whose children had been helped by my platform and mental health professionals who praised the foundation's comprehensive approach to adolescent support services. My family attended the ceremony but remained in the background, unable to participate meaningfully in celebrating work they'd dismissed until it became publicly prestigious. They looked uncomfortable and out of place among the healthcare professionals, educators, and advocates who genuinely understood my platform's social impact. After the ceremony, Dr. Martinez from the County Mental Health Authority approached me with remarkable information. Your platform has already helped over 2,000 teenagers in our region, she said. Our preliminary analysis suggests MindBridge's crisis intervention features have prevented at least 23 suicide attempts in the past 6 months. The data was staggering. While my family had been dismissing my work as a computer hobby, I'd been quietly preventing tragedies and saving lives throughout our own community. The platform they'd never bothered to understand was making measurable differences for struggling families in our area. Saturday morning brought my departure for California. Ryan helped me pack the remaining boxes from my apartment, while we discussed plans for expanding MindBridge's technology through my new Silicon Valley position. You're going to accomplish incredible things out there, Ryan said. The resources and talent you'll have access to will allow you to help millions of teenagers worldwide instead of just thousands regionally. I felt excited rather than sad about leaving Michigan. The state would always be my home, but it no longer contained the family support system I'd once hoped to develop. Moving to California represented freedom from the dismissive treatment that had constrained my self-confidence for years. My phone buzzed with a final text from Frank, Safe Travel's son. We're proud of what you've accomplished. The message arrived 2 years too late and carried no acknowledgement of their role in making my departure necessary. They were proud now that my success reflected positively on them, not when I'd needed encouragement during uncertain early phases of building the company. I didn't reply to Frank's text. There was nothing left to say to people who'd proven they only valued achievements after they became profitable and prestigious. The drive to the airport took me past the construction site where the Linda Patterson Teen Mental Health Center would open in 18 months. The facility would serve struggling adolescents long after I'd relocated to California, providing resources and support that honored my mother's memory in ways my family had never thought to appreciate. As my plane taxied toward the runway, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed since that lonely evening at my IPO celebration 3 weeks earlier. I was leaving Michigan not as the dismissed dreamer seeking family approval, but as a successful entrepreneur who'd learned to value himself independent of others' opinions. California offered opportunities to develop mental health technology for global audiences while working with innovative teams who valued creativity and independence. The Linda Patterson Foundation would continue its mission in Michigan, helping families who understood the importance of the work, even if my own family never had. Sometimes the most liberating thing you can do is stop seeking approval from people who've proven they don't understand your worth. My family's belated recognition meant nothing compared to the self-respect I'd gained by refusing to accept dismissive treatment any longer. The plane lifted off toward my new life, carrying me away from people who'd missed every opportunity to support my dreams, and toward colleagues who valued the innovation and independence they'd never appreciated. 6 months later, I was thriving in my new role at Nexus Technologies in Palo Alto, leading a team of brilliant engineers developing mental health platforms for global audiences. Our latest innovation, an AI-powered crisis intervention system, was being implemented by healthcare networks across 12 countries. My work at Nexus allowed me to expand MindBridge's core concepts into comprehensive solutions, reaching millions of users worldwide. The platform we'd developed could now identify mental health crises in real-time, connect users with appropriate resources in over 20 languages, and provide culturally sensitive support for diverse populations. The Linda Patterson Foundation had officially opened its doors in Michigan, operating the Teen Mental Health Center that was already serving over 500 adolescents each month. The facility provided exactly the kind of comprehensive support I'd wished existed during my own difficult teenage years, offering crisis intervention, peer support groups, family counseling, and educational programs completely free of charge. Local news reports about the foundation's impact reached me regularly through Google alerts, showing pictures of teenagers and families whose lives had been transformed by the resources we'd created. The center had prevented 14 suicide attempts in its first 4 months of operation, validated the foundation's mission and my mother's legacy. My family's attempts at reconciliation had dwindled over the months, as they realized I wasn't interested in quick forgiveness that ignored years of dismissive treatment. Frank occasionally sent updates about dealership business, but I rarely responded. Jessica had stopped trying to arrange meetings after I declined several coffee invitations. Marcus's texts became less frequent as he accepted that our relationship had permanently changed. They'd missed their opportunity to support my dreams when encouragement would have meant something meaningful. Their current interest felt hollow and self-serving, motivated by association with my success, rather than genuine pride in my achievements. Ryan visited California quarterly to update me on MindBridge's continuing operations under new ownership. The acquiring company had expanded the platform's reach, significantly integrating our technology with their existing healthcare networks to serve over 10 million users across North America. Your original vision for helping struggling teenagers has touched more lives than you probably imagined possible, Ryan said during his latest visit. The platform's impact keeps expanding as more healthcare systems recognize its effectiveness. I felt profound satisfaction knowing that my work continued benefiting people, regardless of my family's capacity to understand or appreciate it. The teenagers accessing mental health resources through MindBridge's technology didn't care whether my father respected my career choices. They cared that someone had developed tools to help them navigate their darkest moments. My new colleagues at Nexus appreciated the independence and innovative thinking my family had never valued. Dr. Sarah Chen, our chief medical officer, frequently praised my ability to develop technology solutions without being constrained by traditional approaches or conventional wisdom. Most entrepreneurs your age rely heavily on family support and validation, Dr. Chen observed. Your independence allows you to pursue innovative concepts without worrying about others' opinions or expectations. It's exactly what we need for breakthrough developments in mental health technology. The irony wasn't lost on me that strangers consistently recognized and valued the qualities my own family had dismissed as problematic character flaws. A year after my departure from Michigan, Hollywood production of my biographical film began filming in Detroit. The movie focused on my journey from dismissed family dreamer to successful entrepreneur who honored his mother's memory through meaningful charitable work. The producer had interviewed my family during pre-production research, and their responses revealed the same lack of understanding that had driven me away. Frank described my success as surprising and admitted he never expected computers to become so profitable. Jessica mentioned being proud of Taylor's business accomplishments, without demonstrating any comprehension of the platform's social impact. The film's narrative emphasized how I'd built something remarkable, despite family skepticism, rather than because of family support. It portrayed my story as validation that pursuing meaningful work matters more than seeking approval from people who don't understand your vision. When the movie premiered 18 months later, I attended the Los Angeles screening with colleagues from Nexus, rather than family members. The film's positive reception validated my journey and inspired other young entrepreneurs facing similar family doubt about unconventional career paths. My personal life had also flourished in California. I'd met Amanda, a pediatric psychologist, who appreciated my work's impact on adolescent mental health outcomes. She understood the significance of what I'd accomplished in ways my family never had, supporting my continued innovation in mental health technology while maintaining her own successful practice. Amanda and I became engaged on the second anniversary of my departure from Michigan, planning a wedding that would celebrate our shared commitment to helping children and families navigate mental health challenges. We chose not to invite my family to the wedding. They'd forfeited their opportunity to participate in my major life events through years of dismissive treatment and conditional support. The people who attended our celebration were those who genuinely supported our work and understood its importance. The Linda Patterson Foundation had expanded beyond Michigan, opening satellite centers in Ohio and Illinois, funded by additional donations from tech entrepreneurs who'd been inspired by my story. Over 5,000 teenagers had received services through foundation programs, with documented prevention of over 100 suicide attempts. Each impact report reminded me that meaningful work creates lasting value regardless of recognition from people who matter to you personally. The teenagers accessing mental health resources through foundation programs didn't care whether my family appreciated my contributions. They cared that someone had created support systems when they needed help most. 3 years after leaving Michigan, I received news that Frank had suffered a minor heart attack. Jessica called to inform me, hoping the medical emergency might prompt a reconciliation conversation. I sent flowers to the hospital with a card wishing him speedy recovery, but I didn't visit or call. Frank's health scare didn't erase years of dismissive behavior or create obligations I'd never accepted. I genuinely hoped he would recover fully while maintaining boundaries that protected my emotional well-being. Jessica's disappointed response revealed they still expected my unconditional forgiveness, despite never acknowledging their role in damaging our relationships. They wanted reconciliation without accountability, forgiveness without change, and involvement without earning it through genuine support. My life had taught me that self-respect requires refusing relationships based on one-sided expectations and conditional approval. The family who dismissed my dreams during uncertain early phases didn't deserve access to the peace and fulfillment I'd built through pursuing meaningful work despite their skepticism. Today, as I write this story from my office overlooking San Francisco Bay, I'm surrounded by colleagues who value innovation and independence rather than traditional conformity. The mental health platforms we're developing will reach millions of users worldwide, providing support and resources that prevent tragedies and save lives. The Linda Patterson Foundation continues honoring my mother's memory through comprehensive mental health services for families who need help during their most difficult moments. Over 10,000 teenagers have accessed foundation resources with documented prevention of over 300 suicide attempts across our expanded network of centers. My story isn't about revenge against family members who failed to support my dreams. It's about learning that self-worth comes from pursuing meaningful work regardless of others' opinions or expectations. True success means creating value for people who need what you're uniquely positioned to provide. The teenagers accessing mental health resources through platforms I've developed don't care whether my father understands technology or respects my career choices. They care that someone recognized their struggles and developed tools to help them navigate difficult times. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to pursue your dreams without waiting for approval from people who don't understand your vision. My family's dismissive treatment taught me to value my own judgment and find fulfillment through meaningful work rather than external validation. The foundation that carries my mother's name continues helping struggling families long after I've moved beyond the relationships that once constrained my confidence. Legacy isn't about who appreciates your work during your lifetime. It's about creating lasting value that improves lives regardless of recognition or acknowledgement. Every teenager who finds hope through mental health resources we've created validates the decision to pursue meaningful work despite family skepticism. Their recovery stories remind me that following your passion creates impact far beyond anything you might achieve while seeking approval from people who don't share your vision. My journey taught me that family relationships require mutual respect rather than unconditional obligation. Love without respect isn't sustainable, and forgiveness without accountability doesn't create healthy boundaries. Today, I'm building technology that prevents teenage suicide attempts worldwide, while my foundation provides comprehensive mental health services, honoring my mother's belief that every child deserves support during difficult times. This work fulfills me in ways that family approval never could, creating meaning that transcends personal relationships or recognition. The most important lesson I've learned is that pursuing meaningful work attracts people who value what you're accomplishing, while rejecting dismissive treatment creates space for relationships based on mutual respect and genuine support. To everyone listening to my story, I want to ask you this. Have you ever felt dismissed by people whose approval you desperately wanted? How did you find the courage to pursue your dreams, despite their skepticism? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might inspire someone else who's struggling with similar family doubt. If my journey resonates with you, please like this video to help others find encouragement when they need it most. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming obstacles and building meaningful success on your own terms. And share this with anyone who might benefit from learning that self-worth comes from pursuing your passion rather than seeking approval from people who don't understand your vision. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting the importance of mental health resources for struggling teenagers. Remember that meaningful work creates lasting value regardless of who appreciates your efforts, and sometimes the most liberating thing you can do is stop seeking validation from people who've proven they don't understand your worth. May you find the courage to pursue your dreams and the wisdom to surround yourself with people who celebrate your journey rather than dismiss your potential.